about how things are going to work today, because our plan today is slightly different to the plan that we've had in recent shiurim. We're going to start just really to whet your appetites on the topic of telling the truth. When should we be telling the truth, and when is it acceptable to lie? So we're going to start by presenting 3 scenarios, and we'll very, very quickly go through the 3 scenarios, and you'll share what you think we should do in these 3 scenarios. They're all related to medicine, to medical dilemmas. And the question is, should I tell the truth or should I lie? That's the first part. After we've sort of discussed and seen the complexity of telling the truth and lying, then we're gonna look at halachic sources. We'll look at the mitzvah in the Torah about not telling a lie, and then we're going to look at some examples from the Midrash and the Gemara of lies. And then once we've looked at the Midrash and the Gemara examples of lies, good lies, meaning lies that are the right thing to do, at the end we'll then come back really to the 3 scenarios that we were discussing at the beginning in a medical context, but we will have a wealth of knowledge on the topic to think about them. Okay, so let's start. Telling the truth, halachic guidelines. So, do you see over here, consider the following scenarios. Would somebody read out scenario number 1?
I'll read it.
Thank you so much, Yosef.
Patient comes to you as a candidate for open heart surgery. You are the heart surgeon at your local hospital. You examine the patient and realize that he is too risk and turn him down. His heart is not healthy and he needs open heart surgery. But his general medical state indicates that he would not survive the operation. How would you explain the situation to him?
Excellent. Okay, you hear the question, everybody? Really, he needs surgery. But unfortunately, he wouldn't survive the surgery. So what do you say? You hear the question? Martem Choshvim. I'm just going to take an asthma spray. You ponder. Do you want to ponder and gather your thoughts, and then we'll go and hear what you say.
What would happen if he doesn't have the heart surgery?
He
He would
dies.
die?
No matter what, they die in the situation.
No matter what they die.
Yeah, that's not good, is it? You're right. Okay.
So we are in a checkmate situation here.
But
Well, do you need to tell them? The question
How will I
is,
deliver the message?
no, what do you say?
No, you gotta tell them.
well, the difference is,
You have to tell them the truth. Okay.
well, in one, or you can just send him home.
What's that gonna do?
I'm not saying it's the right answer, but I'm just saying.
I would.
Okay.
No.
No, I want to explain why. Because his general medical state indicates that he would not survive the operation. He's not going to survive the surgery.
Okay.
If he gets operated on, he dies.
Right.
So imagine the mental strain knowing, okay, I'm going to go into this operating room. There's not a chance that I'm going to survive. Just by its wording here, it doesn't say 5% chance. It doesn't say 2% chance. It indicates that he would not survive the operation. So he's going to go into the room, and he's going to be like, okay, I'm walking into my death.
Right.
The other scenario is he's too high risk to turn him down. He needs the surgery. He's probably going to die soon. He could die walking down the street on his way out of the hospital. But in that scenario, it's sudden. He's not expecting it. It doesn't go through the emotional turmoil. I don't think this is the right answer, but I'm just kind of being...
Okay, but you can hear the position.
I can hear
You hear the
but
position of
maybe
just saying,
of not telling him the truth, because maybe the truth is too difficult.
I would. I challenge that.
oh, good, this is good. It's
I
getting
would
good here.
tell the person that I'll give him a choice. Like I will not tell him the truth. Instead, I'm gonna what do you call it? Like cheer him up. Like I think it's gonna help. Like hey, we can do the operation if you want, but there are consequences, and the worst case scenario is this. But if you say that, look, you're gonna die, and even though we don't do the operation, you're gonna die anyway. So it's actually negative for me. It sounds negative. So I would give the person a chance. I would tell him that there is a possibility that this might happen, high chance, high possibility. But I believe in. We said that we don't rely on miracles so much, but I believe in miracles. So who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair mod.
You know, like, kids,
Yeah, I like miracles.
Doctor source CVs.
And
So-
also,
Wait, one second. Were you going to say something, Idan?
Just response to Micha's idea, or what he brought up of like sending him off. That if the patient is still very sick and he feels that the doctors aren't there for him, like on his side, I think that could be very damaging also. If
Like
he
it,
feels
like
that
feel
they're withholding
rejected.
information and- we can-
I
I know it's so
think
tricky.
a very bad situation. What I suggest. For
Yes.
instance, what I'm kind of pointing out is that at least I feel like I've narrowed down for myself, and maybe many of us might agree, that the two extremes are not amenable. They're not going to work.
Right.
So one scenario where you tell them exactly what's going, you basically like read them verbatim what's on this, like you're not going to survive this surgery.
Yeah,
I can't turn you away.
that's not
That's
great.
not going to work. Being completely honest and being completely dishonest.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So either of those extremes, it has to be some balance in the middle.
I like that.
think we
Okay,
can
yeah,
agree
fair
on that.
mod. Excellent, thank
But
you.
what the balance is different.
Oh, so we're gonna I hope come to some guidelines. Shalom uvracha, yes.
So the first,
Dod shela micha.
so the first obligation of the doctor is to do no harm. So that obliterates the possibility of going on the operating table. So the doctor has to tell him that. As far as him going home, he's likely to die. He knows he's going to die without the surgery. So, but the doctor doesn't know because only Hashem knows.
Right.
So when he goes home, maybe there are miracles. Maybe something will happen spontaneously. But
Excellent.
that gives him a glimmer of.
Right.
My uncle is a doctor.
Ah, also this is perfect.
I'm not a heart surgeon.
Oh, I
He's a
see.
psychologist.
Ah, so we're going to be talking. Oh, please God, at the end you'll be interested in our. Some of the sources are rabbi doctors at the end. Two of the positions at the end are presented by rabbi doctors who sort of brought both worlds into their position. Please God by you, Be'ezrat Hashem, as well. Okay.
also Rav, in addition, it says here you are the head heart surgeon, so you have a lot of connections. Like you can do everything to have the man live B'ezrat Hashem. But I was thinking that I would not tell the truth because it says in the Torah that distance from the lie.
Oh, we're going to get to there.
So in behalf of peace, in behalf of like cheering up the patient, I would tell him like white lies.
You're fair.
Can I have a hot take here?
Oh, Zachariah, one honor. Yes.
I'll just say what I would prefer to say. If I would prefer somebody to tell me the truth, because then I could do like the most tshuva before the operation. Like if the doctor talks to me in a way that like I think it's like going to be successful, or that it like minimizes the risk,
Yeah.
not have such a strong tefillah and opportunity to tshuva before the operation. So,
Excellent.
interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You're actually drawing on, and Micha's uncle might know about this book. There was a woman who wrote a book. Her name was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Yes, that was such an honor. Perfect. So I think what Zachariah was saying just now, she wrote a book called On Death and Dying. And in her book on death and dying, she wrote about 5 stages that a person goes through as they process their mortality and they realize that the end is near. The acronym is DABDA. Now I have to remember what they are. The first one is denial. I mean, somebody says you just can't believe it. Then after that, there's anger. and then it's debate,
Bargaining.
Yeah, like
Debate.
if I do this, can we try this? And then there's a what's the second D? Despair, and then the final one is acceptance, and that's I think what Zachariah is saying over here. If you tell them the truth, you allow them to go through that process. Is that what you were saying?
No, not.
Oh.
Not quite. It's like in the same ballpark. But I was saying like if somebody's like thinking that they're going into success, like an operation that could be a success, versus one that they're like expecting to die, like their prayer to Hashem is going to be much different, right? I don't know.
No, I do understand.
That's the point. It's not. Yeah.
Okay, but say that there's a story that I could. I feel I've been telling. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I feel that I've been telling lots of stories, but I'm just going to tell you another little story that sort of connects a little bit. I hope this one's going to connect to what Zachariah said. It's a very beautiful story about. The story happened about 150 years ago. 150 years ago in Europe, when boys were 14, they were sent off. They left their town to go to the yeshiva, which could be, like 100, 150 kilometers away. Now, I'm afraid to say I can't remember the rabbi involved, but there was a couple, a mother and a father, who sent their son off to yeshiva as a 14-year-old. And this 14-year-old in yeshiva really, he did so well. He really, like he was a superstar in this yeshiva, and he was very, very happy. Unfortunately, one day, this 14-year-old became sick, and he was the star of the yeshiva, and the Rosh Yeshiva was absolutely distraught. He was absolutely. Then they brought in the top doctors, the top medical teams to have a look at this boy, and his situation continued to deteriorate, and eventually, this poor little boy, he left this world. And then it became the job of the Rosh Yeshiva to go to the parents, to tell the parents that their son has left this world. Can you imagine that journey? So the Rosh Yeshiva went to the mother, and the mother said to the Rosh Yeshiva, why didn't you let me know? Like, how could you have watched him deteriorate and you never sent a message, you never let us know? And the Rosh Yeshiva says, I promise you, we did everything we can. We brought in the top doctors. There was everything we could possibly do to save your son. We did. So the mother said to the Rosh Yeshiva, you didn't do everything. Do you know what you didn't? Do you know what you died? Do you know what you denied my son? You denied him the prayers of his mother.
Right,
Exactly,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, good. Oh, finally we got to Zachariah's. So if you understand where you hear that, Zachariah. So forget the dabta. We'll go back to the that mother. Yes, exactly. When I know what's happening, then I pray.
I'm very sorry to point this out because I know we only have so much time, but I feel that we may have actually misinterpreted the first prompt.
Oh yeah, go on.
Because it says, when I read it, I said, this is what I read. You examine the patient and realize that he is too high risk to turn him down.
And turn him down.
But it says you examine the patient, maybe it was just me then. You examine the patient and realize that he is too high risk and turn him down. So the doctor already turned down the patient for surgery. There's no chance that he's going on the operation.
Yeah, correct. I see what you mean concerning Zachariah's point.
Oh, then it's a Cohn that I would want to know that it's like a...
Yeah. No, I see. No, I think...
terminal thing.
Yeah, the question is, when you explain to him that he's not having the surgery, what do you say?
That's hard.
The truth is, because we have, with your permission, people, questions 2 and 3 are lovely questions. Can you ponder them? And we're going to go to the sources now. Is that okay? Okay, I mean, we just see it's complicated. I don't know, telling the truth is obviously a very, very important thing. But as we will discover when we look in the sources now, we will see that I don't know. It's like truth, emet and sheker are much more difficult to like define and to understand fully. Okay, we're going to start with an example in the Torah of sheker, and then an example in the Torah of emet. And then we're going to look at interpretations of these two, this clash between emet and sheker, and then after that we're going to go to the Talmud. Okay. So, let's just read the Pesukim. Source number one. Source number one is the beginning of Parashat Vayera. If you remember, at the beginning of Parashat Vayera, Abraham and Sarah are visited by 3 malachim. Each malach is coming to tell them a different thing. One of the malachim is coming to tell them that Sarah is going to give birth. Sarah hears the malach telling Abraham that Sarah is going to give birth, and Sarah starts to laugh. That's where we're going to pick up the story. Vatischak Sarah b'kirba, and Sarah laughed. Later she said, Acharei beloti haytali edna. She'd passed the age her childbearing years. Vayta li edna va'adoni zaken. How is it possible that I will return to bear a child? Because Adoni Zaken. Adoni Zaken means that my husband is too old. Right? Okay, if we go to the next verse. Vayomer Hashem el Abraham. God says to Abraham, Lama zeh tzachaka Sarah? Why is Sarah laughing? And why is she laughing? This is God telling Abraham why Sarah is laughing. Ha'af umnam eleid va'ani zakanti. How can I give birth when I, Sarah, am so old? Does everyone see what happened there? God tweaked it. Sarah laughed and she said, how can I give birth? Va'adoni zaken. My husband is so old. But when God reports the story to Abraham, God tells Abraham, why is she laughing? She thinks she's too old to give birth. Yeah, that now Rashi, based on the Midrash, says on that. Shina HaKatuv mipnei hashalom. The reason why God tweaked it was in order to maintain peace. Sharei hi amra va'adoni zaken. She said that my husband is too old, but God reported as if she was saying she is too old. You follow? But mipnei hashalom, for the sake of peace in the home, God tweaked the words of Sarah in reporting them to Abraham. Yes.
So he's really protecting Abraham Avinu's male pride, because Sarah is like, there's no Viagra, and he's past his prime, and she's like, okay, no way is this going to happen. Not because she's past her prime, but because Abraham.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Capable. So he's really doing a chaim to a chesed.
Right. So we see this story really, in terms of bringing a proof, you can't really bring a stronger proof than that. To say that the concept of emet has to be tweaked. I would even be as audacious, if that's the right word, as to say that the word emet isn't necessarily translated into the word that we say truth in English. Because we're saying over here that maybe emet is something which is truth. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, maybe that's a good...
What's correct is not always what's...
Or like truth is also like from perspectives. You know what I mean? Like I can look at it from my perspective and it looks this way, and somebody else can look at the same thing from another perspective and it looks another way. Meaning from God's perspective, that is true. I tell you if you understand. From our perspective, it isn't true. You follow what I'm saying? So I'm not sure if I'd go by correct.
Yeah.
I would say that truth, we view truth as an objective reality. And it could be that the word emet is not the Hebrew translation for an objective reality. I'll go even further than that. There's a lovely book called Michtav Me'Eliyahu that we were talking about today, that Micha and I were talking about today. In the book Michtav Me'Eliyahu, he has a section called on the truth topic of Emet v'Sheker. And he suggests that there is no such thing as an absolute objective truth, because anything that I think about, I am nogea badavar. I have ulterior motives. The fact that I'm thinking about it means that I have some relationship to it. You follow?
It's polluted.
Right. I know there's a very well-known journalist here, and she's a journalist and a Torah teacher called Sivan Rahav Meir. And Sivan Rahav Meir has said many times, there's no such thing as an objective journalist. Like, there's no just the facts. That idea is not, just doesn't exist. So it could be when we talk about emet, we're talking about the right way from my perspective. You follow? Okay, so that's story number one. That's a story of Avraham, Sarah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu tweaking the information for the sake of shalom. Okay, now let's go to source number two. Source number two is the source in the Torah that tells us that we can't lie. So the Torah tells us this: Midvar sheker tirchak. We have to distance ourselves from lies. V'nakiv tzadik al tarok v'kilo adstik rasha, because I will not justify an evil person. Now, on this idea, midvar sheker tirchak is a very unusual way to present a mitzvah. Normally, let's say when the Torah tells us you're not allowed to steal, the Torah says lo tignov. Nachon? You're not allowed to kill, lo tirtzach. So I would have expected lo teshaker, following the model with which the Torah normally writes a negative mitzvah. But here it doesn't say that. The Torah says midvar sheker tirchak, which means distance yourselves from evil. Now we're going to come to two interpretations of why the Torah writes not do not lie, but rather distance yourself from falsehood. So let's start with the Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch in source number 4, I want to remind you all what the Sefer HaChinuch is. Sefer HaChinuch is over here right behind Micha, 5 volumes. It is a book that goes through all 613 mitzvot. And the author, excellent. And the author, you are so, look at this as a multi-something presentation here today. Thank you, Micha. And he goes through each of the 630 mitzvot, and he does 4 things for each one of the 630 mitzvot. The first thing is he explains what the mitzvah is. The second thing is he tells us the rationale for the mitzvah. The third part is the details of the mitzvah, and the fourth part is when do we keep the mitzvah? Is it kept at all times? Is it from the temple times? Is there a mitzvah for men, a mitzvah for women, mitzvah for Kohanim, mitzvah for this? So if we look at the rationale for this mitzvah, he writes in the section on the rationale of the mitzvah of Midvar Sheker Tirchak, it's mitzvah number 74. Al Kain, his hirutanu haTorah leharchik min hasheker harbe. We have to distance ourselves from evil, from falsehood. Como shekatuv midvar sheker tirchak v'nei hizkira bo lashon richuk lerov miuso. Ma shelo hizkira kain b'chol shar ha'azharot u'mitzad harichuk hizharutanu shelo nateh oznenu klal l'shum davar shenachshov shu sheker. ואף על פי שאין אנו יודעים בבר שיהא אותו דבר שקר, וכאין מה שאמרו זכרונם לברכה, הרחק מן הכיעור ומן הדומה לו. You have to distance yourself from evil, because evil, he says, is more dangerous, it would seem to be. than other things. It's not good enough. It's not good enough just not to do it, but ma'us means despicable. It's so unpleasant that it's not good enough just not to lie, but you have to be outside of the world of lying. You follow? I mean, it's like, I'll give you a terrible, terrible analogy. I'm just wondering, now, let's say I'm wearing clothing that I haven't changed for the last week, right? So there's really quite a large stench around me, right? So then, let's say I decide, you know what, it's time to have a shower. I take off my clothing, I change into new clothing, but I keep the clothing in a bag next to me. So it doesn't really help, you follow? I'm not wearing it anymore, but I'm still carrying it with me. You follow? So I'm still in the world of the, you follow? It's a little bit like that in Midvar Sheker Tiruchak. It's not just about taking it off. It's you can't be in the world of Sheker. You follow? In fact, there's the Rabbi speak about Alma de Shikra. Alma de Shikra is like the world of falsehood. It's not just about telling a lie. It's about being in the world of Sheker. You follow? Does that make sense to you? I don't know whether this is a good analogy. It's probably a terrible example. But let's say I've never been to the Oscars, right?
Yeah.
But the Oscars is just, I don't know. I mean, I have to say, I'm not really into that sort of world. But it's not just about not speaking there. It's just that I don't want to be in that world. That's an Alma de Shikra. You follow? It's even if I go there and I don't say a word, and I don't tell any lies, and I don't, sort of whatever the appropriate behavior is in those places. Even if I don't engage in that behavior, I'm still inside the Alma de Shikra. You follow? And therefore, Midvar Sheker Tirchak isn't just about me personally not telling a lie, but it's being outside of that environment. The smelly clothing, you have to put that in some basket somewhere or other. Put it in a washing machine. That's probably the best place to put it. And then I can, be not part of that. Okay. So that's how the Sefer HaChinuch explains the concept of Midvar Sheker Tirchak. Not just not lying, but outside of that world. The Sfat Emet as another interpretation. The Sfat Emet was the Admor Migur, and he writes over here, Matzinu kan be'ah. This is very, very interesting. Do you know what he says? This is very, very nice. He contrasts, and I haven't seen anyone else do this, he contrasts the idea of sheker with the idea of emet. Do you know what? The idea of tzedek. Do you know like laharchik mina sheker means I have to distance myself from falsehood, and we've explained from the Sefer HaChinuch what that means. But there's a parallel. Do you know what the parallel is? Yes, very good. Isn't that brilliant?
What is it?
Tzedek tirdof. Pursue justice. So he says they're really two sides of the same coin. It's about what world you choose to be in. You follow? Am I going to be in the litrachek, which means I have to not only distance myself from the Alma de Shikra, but I have to run after tirdof, to run after the world of tzedek. And according to the Sfat Emet, these two mitzvot are parallel mitzvot. Now, I wish I was sufficiently expert in Torah to say that there are no other mitzvot that we're told to go near or to go far, but I think this is the only two mitzvot where it's not part of the kiyum of the mitzvah. Like sometimes in a mitzvah, you have to stand back because, let's say on Matan Torah, God says you have to stand back, but that was part of the Kabbalat HaTorah experience. But here, I'm told in general, sort of when I'm going about my daily life, to run after tzedek, lirudof acharei tzedek, And in my general life, I'm being told, litrachek, to distance myself from sheker. To the best of my knowledge, those are the only two times where this movement is not integral to the mitzvah. I could stand still and tell a lie, and I could stand still and tell the truth. My movement isn't connected to my fulfillment of the mitzvah, and yet these two match off with each other very nicely. Okay, with this point, we conclude part one. Part one was Torah, and then analysis of the psukim in the Torah. We looked at the story of Sarah and Avraham and that little tweaking, and then this idea of litrachek min sheker. Sheker is not just a word, it's like a world of falsehood. Like, it's not about a moment, a statement, it's about a world. There's a world of truth and a world of falsehood, and I need to pursue the world of truth, justice, and I have to distance myself from the world of falsehood. Is that clear until now? Joy? Happiness? Questions? Okay, end of Gemara. Now we're going to go to part two. Two more parts. We're going to look at the Gemara, and then after the Gemara, we're going to look at some modern doctors for you. Rabbi doctors at the end. Okay. Does anyone know this song? This is from the Talmud in Ketubot. Do you know this song? Ketzad meraktim lifnei yakalo, ketzad meraktim yakalo. Do you know this song? Ha la 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 la. Hi la ya la la. Hi la 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 la. Hi la la la. Alam bam 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 bam. Hi la 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 la. Oh, very nice. We managed to fit a nigun even in the middle. We might have to do that again next week. Okay, this is the Midrash. Not Midrash, I'm sorry, a Braita. The Braita. Tanu Rabbanan, a rabbi's taught. Ketzad meragdim lifnei kala. How should you dance in front of a bride at her wedding? Beit Shammai Omrim, Kala Kamoshi. You say whatever you see. In other words, Beit Shammai say, if you go to a wedding and the bride and groom look awful, you go over Mazal Tov, you look awful. And that's Beit Shammai, because you just say what it is. And Beit Hillel, you'll be happy to hear, says no. When you go to a wedding and the Chatan and Kala look awful, you say Mazal Tov, you look great. You follow? But that's the debate. How could you say they look great when they literally look awful? So that's the debate between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai say, Kamochi, you see what you say, what you see. If this is a great wedding, you say this is a great wedding, you look great. If this is an awful wedding and they look terrible, you say this is an awful wedding and you look terrible. Beit Hillel Omrim say no. Kala na'eva chasuda, you always say you look great. You follow? Okay, so Beit Shammai, Beit Shammai say to Beit Hillel, I mean, let's say the woman is, he describes Haita Chigeret or Suma, she was like an invalid or she was blind. How can you say you look great? You know, this is amazing. The Torah just told us, we literally just read Midvar Sheker Tiruchak, leave the world of falsehood. If I go to my wedding and I say you look great, how is that not a problem? Say Beit Shammai to Beit Hillel. Your instinct, I can hear, is telling you that can't be right. So Beit Hillel says to Beit Shammai, "L'divrechem mishu lakach mekach ra min hashuk, yishavchenu bo or yiganenu beinav, haviyomer yishavchenu beinav. Mikan amru chachamim leolam tei da'ato shel adam me'urevet im habriot." This is a very important idea. Beit Hillel say, the principle, and it proves it on a scenario that we're not going to mention over here, that the principle of Beit Hillel, and it seems to be that Beit Shammai may also accept it, and this is very important, Le'olam tehei da'ato shel adam me'urevet im habriot. I, as a person, I must always function in a healthy way in society. You follow? There are societal norms in every society, and I have to abide by those societal norms. So, I don't know. This is a good example. When you go to a wedding, it doesn't matter what it was like. You always say, "You look great. You look wonderful." That's just what you say at a wedding. You follow? If you get invited out for a Shabbat meal, it was always delicious, even if it wasn't delicious. Because that's just a way that we interact with other people. To behave with brutal honesty all of the time is just not a way to function healthily in society. That's Beit Hillel. You follow? Were you going to make a comment on that? Or
Yeah. So it's also when you join together, it's one of the biggest mitzvot you can do. So if you're insulting the bridal couple, you're insulting Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
yeah, you're quite right. Quite right. I wasn't going to mention it, but Beit Hillel says this once, meaning if they were in shidduchim and you're deciding, then you could express an opinion. But when they're standing under the chuppah, all you do is you want to encourage the love between the husband and the wife. Exactly. And my encouraging of the love between the husband and encouraging the love between the husband and the wife, that's my task at the wedding. Say Beit Hillel. And and maybe that even comes back to, that is emet. That's emet. Atem shomim? Does that make sense? Meaning from his perspective, she is the most beautiful girl in the world. And from her perspective, he is the greatest guy in the world. And I'm just reflecting to them what they see. You follow?
In each other.
In each other, exactly.
And if a person, let's say, has a criticism, it's a personal opinion. It's like in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's probably the most beautiful thing in the world.
Exactly.
So that's the emet. It's not really a risk of.
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider a sheker. I lean more towards Beit Hillel.
Yeah, it's not even, but it's not a sheker. That's the point. You understand? When we say midvar sheker tirchak, that's not what we're talking about. You follow? Does that make sense to you? That's the Gemara. The Meiri writes on this that you're supposed to. Really follows on a little bit what you were saying before. That my task at the wedding is in order to strengthen the love that exists between the husband and the wife, and that is the truth. Atem mevinim? It's all about perspective. So I would suggest that according to Beit Hillel, it's not that it's between truth and a lie. That's not a lie. Atem shomim et zeh? Okay.
In today,
Michael, yes.
today world, we will say politically correct.
Oh, I think that's a bit more difficult, that. No, I don't think we need to. I think politically correct is because sometimes you do need to say things that are not politically correct. But we're talking about within the context of the marriage of a husband and a wife. So then, I want to as Dodshell Micha was about to, they are, that union is a mitzvah. So I'm encouraging that mitzvah, and any comment that I can do that will enhance that mitzvah is great. Politically correct is more about like treading on eggshells in order to make sure arguments don't happen. I think that's something else.
I have a pretty crazy story. There's this family in Spots.
You only have crazy stories.
That used to host for the yeshiva, and a lot of the yeshiva bochrim weren't going there because I don't know, they didn't like the family, they didn't like the food, blah blah blah. And so I would go there like every other Shabbat because it's time at this house. And then the last time I was there, I told the woman that was the Bala Bait, I said, oh, your food's so great. And she's like, oh, I want to do catering. I said, oh, you should definitely do it. You know, I know you'd be successful. And to be honest, the food was like, it was good. It was like, okay, you know. But she was really like happy about it. And then really I didn't ever go to their house again. She died, like that was the last time I saw her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was a pretty crazy story.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ay, ay.
Well, yeah, that's the next time I went there was sitting Shiva.
Oh, it's a hurry. Thank you for that.
So if I was like Beit Shammai, how could I go sit Shiva? You know, after like
Yeah.
yeah.
Ay, ay. Yeah, but you have very high standards when it comes to food. So probably for the rest of the world, it was probably top-notch food. No, because your measure is different to other people's. Yeah, the truth is that this pointer on Beit Hillel, this is not the point that I want to develop together, but we should never underestimate the impact of the way that we speak to other people on how they're doing. You know what I mean? You know, if I'm able to greet someone with a good day, and if I'm able to offer a compliment, that's a really very powerful way that you can boost. You know, you can really help people by doing that. That's not our topic, but it's certainly an important idea that comes from what you were saying. Thank you very much for that. With that, we finished the Talmud lie, the big machloket between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, that we want to suggest isn't a lie. Beit Hillel is not lying. Beit Hillel is saying something to strengthen the love between the husband and the wife, which is meshubach. Okay. For the last few minutes, I want to turn now back to the discussion we had at the beginning. We're going to have a debate about telling the truth to patients. So we're going to look really at two poskim, two rabbis. Both of them lived in the 1980s. Rav the Tzitz Eliezer, I think, passed away in the year 2000. And Rav Avraham, to the best of my knowledge, at the bottom here, is still alive. They're both writing about medical issues in the 1990s. The Tzitz Eliezer was on the Jerusalem Rabbinical Court, and he lived actually quite near here, in Nachlaot, near the Shuk Machne Yehuda. And here's one of his areas. He wasn't a doctor, but one of his areas of expertise was medical ethics. And he was asked about to what extent you have to tell the truth to a patient. So I'm going to read his answer to you. She'ela. Source number 8. Ha'im chova liyadea et hametupal. Do you need to tell the patient, meirosh? Do you have to tell them from the beginning, al achuzei hatzlacha hanimuchim? Do you have to tell them that there's a very low possibility of success? Ad eize ramat pirut yesh laredet ba'et kabalat haskama mudat me'metupal lifnei hatipulim orthodontim chirurgiyim hayachol ligrom nezek. To what extent do you have to go into the details of the possibility of success or failure when you are about to operate on a patient? You know, nowadays, before you operate on a patient, you can only operate when they've signed on an agreement. How much detail do you need to go into before the patient signs that piece of paper? You hear the question? Okay. Let me read his answer, and then you can say what you think. Tshuva. מכיוון שמדובר בהיכת שלא נשקפת סכנת חיים באי טיפול בדרך האמורה בשאלה. The particular question over here was talking about surgery that was not life-threatening, meaning it was surgery that was being performed, as a, what do you call it? It wasn't
cosmetic.
Optional surgery. It wasn't surgery that was required to save this person's life. Elective surgery. I think it's called elective surgery. There was an elective surgery. Lachen, once you're talking in elective surgery, lachen מבחינת ההלכה מחויב הרופא להודיע למטופל על מידת אחוזי ההצלחה, אפילו כאחוזי אי הצלחה hema numuchim. You have to go into every detail in elective surgery to make it absolutely clear what's going to be. Even if there's only a very small chance of the operation not being successful, in an elective surgery, you have to provide all the information. Those are the words of the Tzitz Eliezer. You could imply from there that concerning elective surgery, I'm required to tell everything, but it could be that if it's non-elective surgery, in other words, it's surgery where his morale might be a very important factor in the success of the operation, and therefore if I were to really go into the details, that could impact the patient's morale. In that situation, I may not be required to tell them all the information. Those are the words of the Tzitz Eliezer. Anyone have any comments, thoughts?
No,
It makes
I
sense
read-
to me.
okay. There is a concept which I know I read about. I talked about, especially with more or less what unnecessary surgeries. It said like surgeries that are not that are not life threatening to you, or you don't need to get surgery if something that's not life threatening. You shouldn't get it in general. It's like
That's a separate
that's a whole
question.
different situation.
That's a
but
separate
yeah,
question.
That's all. Totally.
No, we could have a discussion once on the topic of cosmetic surgery. That's to what extent is that allowed, but that's not our discussion.
Because you're putting a life in danger by
Yeah.
doing it, which is unnecessary risk.
Yeah, putting yourself in unnecessary risk.
risk.
That's a lovely
Yeah.
question. We may well look. Yeah, that's a good topic
That
to
one.
discuss in the future.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you have to paint broad strokes. So if you're going in for a brain surgery, you know generally that it's high risk. And a lot of things can go wrong. But like he's saying, if you go into the minutia of the detail, how the many ways that things can go wrong, and you might not come back the same, you might not come back at all, it's implied anyway. You already know that. So like you said, it's going to make you more anxious and more. I think that's where he's going with that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't think what he said is particularly controversial. The words of the Tzitz Eliezer, like his guidelines, and he's talking particularly about elective surgery, and he doesn't write specifically what he would speak about non-elective surgery. I want to go to our second rabbi doctor. There's a very, very interesting rabbi. His name was Rabbi Avraham. And he wrote a very, very interesting book. And in fact, Dr. Micha's uncle might enjoy this book. The book is called Nishmat Avraham. Has anyone heard of a book called the Mishnah Brura? Are you familiar with the book Mishnah Brura? Yeah, Mishnah Brura is a commentary. It's really a halachic discourse around Shulchan Aruch or Achaim. What he did, Nishmat Avraham, Rav Avraham, is he wrote halachic discourse on the Shulchan Aruch, but on questions specific to a doctor. So let's say in the laws of Shabbat, it would be talking about pikuach nefesh. In the laws of kosher, it might be talking about ramifications of this medication over that medication. So it's a halacha, medical halacha, but written through it's not a book of it's not a book independent of previous books of halacha. It's not a book of halacha. It's really a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch from the eyes of a rabbi doctor. You follow? The book is called Nishmat Avraham. I haven't seen it in bookshops for a long time. We have it at home, and it's a fascinating book. Anyway, let's look. He talks about a very, very interesting scenario. This is in Yoredea, and he says like this: Hanotela Mavet. This is the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to look at the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to look at the Shach commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, and then we're going to look at the Nishmat Avraham's commentary on the Shach on the Shulchan Aruch. You follow? So the Shulchan Aruch says this: Notela Mavet. If somebody who is about to leave this world, Omrim lo I mean, it's a really very difficult siman to read. Somebody who's leaving this world, do you know what you say to them? Hitvada, it's time for vidui. As you know, in our Jewish tradition, when somebody is about to leave this world, they have a vidui. The vidui, Ashamna Bakarnu, like we say, we Ashkenazim, we say it particularly during Elul and during Tishrei, vidui. And after the vidui, we conclude the vidui by saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Whereby, just like children, when they first start to speak, often the first sentence we teach them is, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We enter my speaking life with Shema Yisrael. So I end my life with the words, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So somebody who is on their way out, we tell them it's time to say Shema. Okay, you hear that? That's the Shulchan Aruch. On the Shulchan Aruch, there's a very powerful commentary. The Shach, he writes, Nirad davka benotel mavet omrim lo hitvada. I would only say to somebody, it's time for vidui, meaning there's a few minutes left. I would only say it's time for vidui when it's really time for vidui. Why? I could, if I say to somebody it's time for vidui, and they've still got more time, that would just break their heart. And if they may have lasted for a day or two, when a close family member comes over and says it's time for vidui, that's really it's their way of saying it's time to let go, time to give up. You know what I mean? So you only say it when it's really at the end. And if you say it too early, you could break someone's heart. Inami belo notel hamavet ein omrim lo kach sharei adan yesh lo shut sheyuchal litvadot aval benotel hamavet yesh lechush sheyamut pitom belo vidui. So it's a really the shach is just making us aware of the sensitive nature of this particular halacha. But really, when we come back to our idea of telling the truth or not telling the truth, saying how it is and not saying how it is, what the Shach is making clear is how powerful our words can be with somebody else. So sometimes if I present it as it is, I can cause somebody to break their heart. That could really be a terrible, terrible thing. You follow? That's what the Shach is making us aware of here. I know in psychology, I heard an example, but maybe this is something that you would know more about. All of us, we all have, in Hebrew it's called manganon hagana. Everyone has self-defense mechanisms. Now we have defense mechanisms. Sometimes they are healthy defense mechanisms. Sometimes they're unhealthy self-defense mechanisms, but they allow us to survive. If I were to remove, someone's defense mechanism, they could crash. And sometimes I would play along with a defense mechanism because the power of my words could cause somebody to break their heart. So the Shach is just making us aware of how sensitive this halacha in the Shulchan Aruch is. It's only when I realize that somebody is about to leave this world, that's the stage that I would come over to them and say, it's time for vidui, but be aware of how powerful those words are and how cautious we need to be in saying that because of the chas v'sholom, the damage they could cause. You follow? Okay, that was Shulchan Aruch Shach. Now we're going to go to the contemporary, the Nishmat Avraham, this commentary that I was mentioning, written by a rabbi who lived here in Jerusalem, and he was a rabbi in Beit Vakan and a doctor in Sharei Tzedek. So he writes like this: Lefi ze yotzeh, based on the opinion of the Shach that we read, Choleh shelo notel hamavet ein omrim lo. Somebody who's not about to die, we don't say to him, it's time to confess. And now he says, V'nir'ah li, it appears to me, says Rabbi Dr. Avraham, it appears to me that these patients, and he speaks about cancer patients and heart patients, Ein tam, there's no need legalot lahem kol hamachshavot v'hayada shel harofeh. There's no need for a doctor to share all of his thoughts and all of his knowledge with a patient. Ki hadavar lo yavi kol to'ed lacholeh. It won't help the patient to know that I'm not sure what to do, or like to present everything that I know to the patient isn't necessarily helpful to the patient. Ela alul ligrom lo yeush. It could cause them to give up. Uvechemedumani she'achen kach linhok. And therefore, I believe this is the right thing to do. He, Nishmat Avraham, is drawing from the Shach, who says it's time to confess, just to make us wary about our words. And when we go back to this idea of emet and sheker, it's not so much about what is the objective truth and what's not the objective truth. It's more to do with what's helpful and what's unhelpful, or what's going to make the world, not that we should be lying left, right and center, but the madad is not, I don't need to say everything all the time. Just like Hillel, Beit Hillel, you don't go to the wedding and say, that was awful. Or like in Sfat, you don't go to the meal and say, that was terrible. The fact that it's true doesn't mean you need to say it. Atem shomim et zeh? So the idea of emet v'sheker, we see, is a much more subtle distinction. It's not an objective reality that this is always true and that's always falsehood, but in each situation it's about perspective and looking at the world from that person's perspective, and what's the right information to be sharing to that person from their perspective right now, and that would be the truth. And then sharing information that's not appropriate for them from their perspective right now would be sheker. So I want to, after our little emet for sheker journey, I want to bless us all, be'ezrat Hashem. We should all be blessed with the wisdom to navigate this really, truly complicated channel between different bits of information. And we should be blessed with the wisdom to know when to open our mouths, when to close our mouths, when I should share information, when I shouldn't share information, what's the right thing to say and what's the wrong thing to say. Yishar koach lekulchem.
Oh, yeah.